They operated in shadows, confident you'd never see it. Sure, you'd stay blind to their schemes, to the masks, to the deception. Their arrogance? It was almost spiritual. They believed your kindness meant ignorance, that your silence meant weakness. But what they never understood was that your spirit was watching. Even when your eyes weren't open, they smiled in your face, while crafting your downfall behind your back. This wasn't clumsy, it wasn't random, it was calculated. They mapped it all out. How to dismantle your peace, how to chip away at your confidence, your joy, your name. They even rehearsed how to play the victim when you finally caught on. And for a while, you didn't see it because your heart was pure. You trusted what they showed you. You believed the love was real. The mentorship was genuine. The friendship was mutual. But it wasn't. It was spiritual warfare, packaged as care, wrapped in guidance, delivered with a poisoned smile. And still, they underestimated you. They didn't see the ancient fire inside you, the divine alarm system that would eventually wake you up. And when it did, everything changed. Because once a chosen one sees, they can't unsee. And once the light hits truth, every mask begins to melt. Now, you're not just recovering, you're remembering. And they're panicking. Because the same pit they dug for you, they're falling into, one by one. This isn't karma. This is cosmic law, and justice has, officially, begun. So let's talk about what really happened. Because this wasn't just petty jealousy. This wasn't someone having a bad day, lashing out. No, this was a coordinated spiritual attack. They didn't just accidentally hurt you. They didn't accidentally misunderstand you. They planned this with strategy, with timing, with intent. They studied you, watched how you loved, how you trusted, how you gave without keeping score. And then they weaponized it all. They positioned themselves as supporters, advisors, even protectors. Some called you family, some called you soul tribe, some even called you chosen, just like them. But behind the curtain, they were orchestrating your downfall. They crafted a version of themselves that matched your wounds and became what you thought you needed. They mirrored your language, reflected your light, played the role perfectly. Why? So you would lower your guard, so you would hand them access to the deepest parts of you. And once they had it, they moved in silence. They attacked subtly, little comments here and there, small jokes at your expense, sideways glances that carried weight. They knew exactly what they were doing. This wasn't messy, it was surgical. They targeted your insecurities, your spiritual gifts, your calling. They went after your voice because it carried truth. They attacked your vision because it carried destiny. They tried to shake your confidence because it carried divine authority. This wasn't just envy, it was fear. You represented something that scared them because it couldn't be controlled, because it exposed their lack of authenticity. See, there's something threatening about a person who is free, who doesn't need validation, who doesn't worship false idols or play the ego games. And you were becoming that person. So they moved fast. Before you realized who you were, before you remembered what you carried, they twisted conversations, turned people against you, planted seeds of doubt in places they knew would grow. And the worst part, they smiled through it all, pretending to cheer you on as they dug holes behind your back. Let that sink in, because the pain you felt wasn't just from the betrayal. It was from the realization that the love you believed in was a lie, that the hands that prayed with you were also the hands that tried to crucify you, that the ones who called you light were secretly building a case to extinguish you. But here's what they never saw coming: your awakening. See, spiritual warfare has a flaw. It relies on you not knowing it's happening. It feeds on ignorance, on blindness, on silence. But the moment you see it, it starts to fall apart. And you saw it, didn't you? You started feeling the tension, the misalignment, the way your spirit recoiled around certain people, even when your mind made excuses. You felt the energy shift, heard the tone change, caught the look in their eyes that didn't match their words. That's when discernment began to activate, and the fog started to lift. And once it did, every memory started looking different. You began replaying old conversations and hearing what they really meant. You recalled compliments and felt the hidden daggers behind them. You remembered moments that didn't sit right, but now you had language for it. That's the gift of divine clarity, and it was always yours. It just needed a trigger, and they provided it, with their own deception. Isn't that something? Their plot to destroy you woke you up, the very attack they hoped would silence you. Unlocked your spiritual eyes. Now here's where it gets deep. These weren't just individuals. This wasn't just one jealous friend, or a bitter ex, or a competitive sibling. This was an organized system of energy, one central manipulator surrounded by enablers, a spiritual hierarchy of darkness, with one goal, control. And guess who became the threat to that control? You, because you wouldn't bow, you wouldn't dim, you wouldn't play along with the performance. You were too real, too honest, too aligned. So they built a whole illusion to tear you down. They recruited others, trained them, knowingly or unknowingly, to speak against you, to isolate you, to shame you for growing, to doubt your discernment. Anyone who defended you, silenced. Anyone who questioned the narrative, removed. It was never about truth. It was always about power. And you were the most powerful thing in the room, because your spirit was still pure, so they tried to dirty your name, because they couldn't touch your soul. But here's the twist. The universe doesn't operate like they do. It doesn't reward manipulation. It doesn't bless lies. It doesn't allow divine purpose to be permanently blocked by human interference. No matter how precise their plan, they forgot the most important detail. You're protected, and the more they attacked you, the more the universe began building your shield. Every word spoken against you became evidence in the spiritual court. Every scheme documented, accounted for, stored in the cosmic record. And justice was already in motion, but they couldn't see that because they thought they were getting away with it. They thought your silence was surrender, that your stillness meant weakness. But really, you were watching, you were waiting, you were gathering clarity. And now, that clarity is here, and it's time for the reversal to begin. They never expected you to wake up. Not fully, not powerfully, not like this. They thought you'd stay trapped in confusion, tied up in self-doubt, choking on their twisted narratives, questioning your own spirit. But instead, you remembered who you are, and that changed everything. Because when a chosen one wakes up, when discernment kicks in, it's like a cosmic alarm going off inside your soul. You stop second-guessing your intuition. You stop giving the benefit of the doubt to energies that feel wrong. You stop tolerating half-love, false peace, and manipulative kindness. And suddenly, the illusion starts cracking. You start seeing connections where before there were only isolated events. You start noticing how every coincidence was actually a pattern. You start hearing what was really being said, even when it was cloaked in spiritual language and sweet-sounding words. That was the beginning of your breakthrough. Not when they betrayed you, but when you stopped betraying yourself. And that was their greatest miscalculation. They didn't anticipate your spirit waking up in the middle of their storm. They thought their lies had you pinned, that the manipulation worked, that the gaslighting was enough to keep you in the fog. But instead, you caught the scent of something divine rising in your chest, a quiet clarity, a voice that didn't yell, but didn't flinch. And that voice whispered, "Look again." And when you looked, everything shifted. Conversations you used to replay in confusion suddenly made perfect sense. You saw the hidden intentions behind their advice. You felt the shade behind their praise. You picked up on the envy hiding in their encouragement. You didn't need evidence anymore. You had energy. You had clarity. You had the gift of discernment, and it was burning through the lies like wildfire. See, people forget that spiritual warfare isn't always loud. Sometimes it's soft, polite, articulate, wrapped in well-dressed manipulation that calls itself concern. But when your spirit wakes up, even beautiful words start sounding like sirens. Even soft voices begin to feel like sandpaper. And even once trusted hands start to feel heavy, cold, unfamiliar. That's because your system, your spiritual system, was never broken. It was just buried under years of people-pleasing, under shame, under social conditioning, under guilt for sensing things you couldn't explain. But not anymore. That inner system? It's fully online now, and it doesn't miss a thing. You started noticing how certain people's energy made your body tense, how your dreams shifted after being around them, how your peace got noisy in their presence. That wasn't paranoia, that was prophecy. And the more you listened, the more you saw. You realized they had a structure, an ecosystem of control. At the top, the manipulator, the master architect of your downfall, the one who pretended to lead in love while planting landmines in your path. They didn't get their hands dirty directly. Oh no, they used others, pawns, messengers, concerned friends, false prophets in spiritual clothing. These people weren't all evil. Many were just scared to lose the manipulator's approval, scared to be cast out of the circle, scared to think for themselves, so they played along. Even when their spirit told them something felt wrong, they stayed quiet when your name was slandered. They nodded in agreement when lies were spread. They looked away when your reputation was being picked apart, piece by piece. Why? Because the system rewarded betrayal. The fastest way to gain favor in that toxic circle? Criticize you, speak against you, mock your growth, dismiss your clarity. And slowly, the very people you once trusted started choosing the manipulator over the truth. But here's what they didn't know. Your silence wasn't weakness, your withdrawal wasn't defeat. It was strategy, divinely inspired strategy. Because while they were trying to dismantle you, the universe was reassembling you. You weren't crumbling, you were concentrating. You weren't breaking, you were becoming. They saw isolation, but heaven saw incubation. And in that hidden place, you received upgrades they'll never understand. Your discernment became razor sharp. Your boundaries became non-negotiable. Your clarity became blinding. And your energy? It stopped entertaining anything that didn't honor your soul. Because here's the truth. Once you awaken, you can't go back. You can't pretend not to know what you know. You can't unfeel what your spirit discerned. You can't shrink yourself to fit their smallness anymore. So yes, there was grief. Grief for the version of you that tolerated betrayal. Grief for the time spent doubting your own intuition. Grief for the relationships that died the moment the truth was revealed. But even deeper than the grief was relief. Because now you see everything. And what once confused you now confirms you. You're not crazy, you're not too sensitive, you're not imagining things. You are chosen and your spiritual DNA has officially activated. And from here on out, you will never walk blindly again. Once your spiritual vision came online, you didn't just see what happened, you saw who was behind it. The face behind the curtain, the puppeteer pulling strings in the dark, the voice behind the smear campaigns, the whisper in others' ears, the manipulator. This wasn't just a toxic person. This was a spirit, a controlling force operating through someone who made themselves the center of everything. At first, they came across wise, mature, put together. The way they spoke, flawless. They knew how to say all the right things. They quoted scripture, used spiritual language, dropped divine insights as if they were channels of heaven itself. And you trusted it because your heart was pure. You weren't looking for power. You weren't looking to be above anyone. You just wanted connection, truth, guidance. But they wanted control, and they knew how to get it. They studied you, found the cracks in your armor, found what you needed emotionally, spiritually, energetically, and then became it. They cloaked themselves in a custom-made persona, one tailored just for you, the spiritual mentor, the empathic friend, the supportive sibling, the loving partner. But it was all performance, a projection, a beautifully constructed facade to win your trust and feed off your light. Because make no mistake, this was never about love. It was about power. And when you started growing, when you started healing, expanding, ascending, that's when they panicked, because your elevation threatened their illusion. Your rising energy disrupted their control. Your awakening exposed their manipulation. And they couldn't have that. So they changed tactics, from love bombing to devaluing, from praise to criticism, from I believe in you to you've changed. Suddenly everything became your fault. You were too sensitive, too prideful, too spiritual, too emotional, too distant. But you weren't too anything. You were just waking up. and that scared them more than anything. So they created a system around you, not just to bring you down, but to keep others from lifting you up. They recruited people, maybe not overtly, but through subtle conditioning. They made backhanded comments about you in private, planted doubts in the minds of those close to you, created a distorted image of who you were, one designed to make others question you, fear you, leave you. They set the stage, wrote the script, and then handed it out to anyone willing to play a role. Some didn't know what they were participating in. Others knew exactly, but all were being used. And here's what makes it even more dangerous. The manipulator hid behind other people. They rarely did the dirty work themselves. No, they let others carry out the damage. They stayed in the shadows, hands clean, reputation untouched, while their pawns became the messengers of chaos. It's spiritual cowardice, an illusion of innocence, while pulling every string behind the scenes. But now you see it all. The hierarchy, the structure, the spiritual pyramid built around one thing: suppressing your rise. Because they knew. From the beginning, they knew what you carried. They knew the potential inside you, the wisdom, the power, the divine calling written into your bones. And it terrified them. Because no matter how polished their presentation was, you were the real thing. They built an empire on illusion. You embodied truth. They knew it, and they tried to bury it before the world could see it. But here's the plot twist. The very system they built to destroy you, it's now collapsing from within. Because once you unplugged from their energy, the whole thing started to fall apart. Their authority exposed as manipulation. Their wisdom revealed as recycled jargon. Empty words with no divine weight. Their influence diminishing by the day. Because the ones they used to turn others against you are starting to see. People are waking up. They're questioning what they've been told. They're watching how your spirit never retaliated, how you stayed grounded, silent, strong. And now the narrative is cracking. What used to be accepted as truth now sounds off. What used to sound righteous now feels manipulative. Because when you carry divine clarity, everything false begins to shake. And shake it has. You can feel it, can't you? The tension in their circle, the uneasiness behind their smiles, the fear in their eyes when your name comes up. They know the collapse is coming. And you're not doing anything to cause it. You're just existing, thriving, walking in truth. And truth alone is powerful enough to dismantle deception. That's the power of being chosen. You don't have to clap back. You don't have to expose anyone. You don't have to get revenge. Your light, your alignment is doing all the work. Because here's the secret they never understood. The chosen one doesn't fight for victory. The chosen one fights from it. You've already won. Because you're no longer in the system. You don't owe anyone closure. You don't need to explain your distance. You don't need to clear your name in circles built on lies. The truth will do it for you. And the divine is watching everything. Every word, every intention, every action taken in the dark. There's a spiritual courtroom where all of this is being reviewed, and the verdict, it's already unfolding. Justice isn't coming. It's here. The manipulator built a kingdom on deception. But every empire built on lies eventually collapses. And now, it's happening. Not in theory, not in the spirit alone, but in plain view, before the very eyes of those who once applauded their show. You're watching it unfold. The fall, silent but undeniable, slow but irreversible. This isn't just karma. This is cosmic symmetry, because what they planned for you is now circling back to them. See, they thought they were immune. They thought hiding behind others, speaking in riddles, manipulating from the shadows would shield them from accountability. But there are no shadows deep enough to hide from divine law, not when you mess with the chosen one. Because your protection, it's not just energetic. It's spiritual law, backed by generations of ancestral covering. Angelic intervention, a divine covenant older than time. So now, every seed of sabotage they sowed, it's harvesting. Let's talk about what that looks like. Because the signs are everywhere. The same people they turned against you are starting to distance themselves from them. Why? Because they feel the shift. They feel the lies unraveling. They feel the energy decaying. People are watching them more closely now, listening with sharper ears, noticing inconsistencies they ignored before. That perfect mask, it's cracking. That flawless facade, it's slipping. That charisma they used to manipulate now sounds rehearsed, mechanical, empty. And their reputation, it's crumbling. From the inside out, no scandal, no exposé, just the slow erosion of credibility, guided by the same hands that once plotted your downfall. Because this is divine justice, and justice rarely makes announcements. It just begins. Suddenly, the manipulator can't keep their story straight. They're contradicting themselves, lashing out, trying to maintain control but losing grip by the second. The same voice that once commanded rooms now makes people uncomfortable. The same charm that drew others in now repels them. And the same group that once worshipped their authority is beginning to question everything. It's a silent betrayal, just like the one they orchestrated for you. And it's poetic, because they're not just losing control, they're losing influence. And for manipulators, that's worse than defeat, because power was their drug, control was their obsession. And when the chosen one walked away, they lost their supply. And it shows. Look closer. You'll see the fatigue in their eyes, the unease in their body language, the stress written across their face. Spiritual warfare has physical consequences. You can't curse someone covered by the divine and not pay the price. You can't orchestrate destruction without creating spiritual debt, and their bill has come due. So now, they're restless. Sleep won't come easy. Peace won't stay. Nothing they do is flowing anymore because they broke alignment with truth, and truth never loses. Meanwhile, you're not even fighting them. You're not clapping back. You're not running a smear campaign. You're not even speaking their name. And yet, they feel you. They feel your growth, your strength, your rising presence. And that alone is destroying them, because the most painful punishment for someone who tried to break you is having to watch you thrive without them, without needing them, without chasing their validation, without defending yourself. You just kept going. And that shattered everything they built, because their narrative required your destruction. Their illusion only worked if you stayed broken. Their control only existed while you were unaware. But now, you're healed, you're aware, you're elevated. And elevation has a frequency, one that exposes everything beneath it. So now, people are comparing your energy to theirs. And the contrast, it's undeniable. You shine with peace, they fidget in chaos. You speak with clarity, they babble in confusion. You stand tall in authenticity, they shrink behind manipulation. This is the great reversal, not just emotionally, but cosmically. Every curse they sent your way, it's returning to sender, not because you wished it, but because the universe is exact. What they meant for harm has been rerouted by divine intelligence, and it's showing up in their health, their relationships, their finances, their spiritual connection. Nothing is flowing, nothing is working, nothing is lasting. Why? Because they tried to sabotage a soul carrying divine purpose. And that always has consequences. So now they're panicking, trying to rebuild the empire, trying to recover the respect, trying to regain what they willingly threw away. But it won't work, because this fall, it's not yours to stop. It's not yours to pity. It's not yours to interrupt. This fall is sacred. It's orchestrated by hands far more powerful than yours, because while they were busy plotting your demise, heaven was documenting every move. And now, the scroll is being opened, the case is being judged, and the sentence is unfolding in real time. And you just keep walking, keep building, keep glowing. Let them feel what you felt. Let them experience the coldness they planned for you. Let them sit in the pit they dug with precision, because the universe, it doesn't forget, and justice, it never misses. So now here you are, still standing, still breathing, but more than that, you're rising, not in the way they expected, not with noise or vengeance, but with quiet, undeniable authority. You didn't need to announce your comeback. You didn't scream for validation. You didn't post 100 times for attention. You just moved differently. You aligned, you healed, you obeyed the call, and heaven responded. Doors began opening. The ones they said were closed for good. Resources began flowing from places you didn't even know existed. Opportunities found you, not because you chased them, but because you became the version of you that attracts them. This is the part they never anticipated, because they thought destroying your name meant destroying your destiny. They thought turning people against you meant turning God against you. They thought blocking your path meant blocking your purpose. But you were never walking in your own strength. You were walking with divine backing. You see, you didn't just survive what they did, you transcended it. And now, the very pressure they applied to break you has made you unbreakable. Like coal under fire, you've been refined into something precious. And every time they cursed your name, heaven upgraded your anointing. Every time they doubted your calling, heaven expanded your reach. Every time they whispered, she'll never recover, he's done, they're finished, heaven whispered back, watch this. And now, they're watching. They're seeing the glow they tried to dim become blinding. They're seeing your peace, the one they tried to fracture, become a fortress. They're watching your influence grow, your connections deepen, your power stretch into spaces they can't reach. And the silence from you? That's the loudest part, because you're not arguing. You're not explaining, you're not asking to be seen. You know who you are now, and that is terrifying to them, because they built their entire strategy on the version of you that doubted yourself, that questioned your worth, that hesitated in your power. But that version doesn't exist anymore. You've stepped into something sacred, something ancient, something no lie can touch. This is your divine acceleration. What once took years is now happening in moments. What once felt impossible is now flowing with ease. What was blocked has now been broken wide open, not by force, but by alignment. That's the part religion doesn't teach. That's the part the manipulator never understood. You don't have to strive when you're walking in purpose. You don't have to beg when you're chosen. You don't have to perform when you're anointed. And you've been anointed for such a time as this. Now let's be clear. Your rise isn't just about you. It's about what you represent. You are the walking contradiction to every curse spoken over your life. The living proof that divine protection outweighs human sabotage. The manifestation of promises made in spiritual places long before this war ever reached the physical realm. Every step you take now echoes through generations. Your ancestors, they feel it. Your future lineage, they'll benefit from it. Because you broke what was never meant to continue. You healed what others ignored. You rebuilt from rubble. And now your structure is unshakable. And the ones who tried to destroy you, they're watching, in disbelief. Watching you rise without their support. Watching you build without their approval. Watching you thrive without their presence. And that absence, it's hitting them harder than they expected. Because for so long they convinced themselves you needed them. That you'd always come back, that you couldn't succeed without their permission. But now, they see it plainly. You were the blessing all along. Your energy, it was the anchor. Your presence, it was the covering. Your loyalty, it was the rarest treasure in their world of illusions. And now that you're gone, there's a void. One they can't fill, one they can't ignore, one they created by trying to erase you. And that regret, it's growing. It's not just sadness, it's the sharp sting of knowing they lost something sacred, and it can't be reclaimed, because this new version of you doesn't fit back into old places, doesn't beg for crumbs, doesn't trade authenticity for comfort. You've outgrown the smallness they tried to trap you in. You've outlived the narrative they tried to bury you under. You've walked through the fire, and now you carry the flame. So no, you're not coming back. You're not reopening doors, you're not explaining the boundaries, you're not dimming your glow so others can feel safe in your presence. You've graduated from that season, and now, you walk with clarity, with confidence, with cosmic authority, because you finally understand they never had the power, not over your life, not over your destiny, not over your spirit. They only had the access you gave them, and now that access is revoked, permanently. This is your time. Your rise, your harvest, and everything they tried to block is being delivered right on time by divine hands. While you've been rising, they've been unraveling. And not just socially, not just emotionally, not even just physically, but spiritually. Because this isn't just a reversal of roles. This is the enforcement of divine justice. What's happening now isn't coincidence. It's not bad luck. It's not karma in the casual sense. This is spiritual consequence, issued by the courtroom of heaven, because heaven records everything. Every false accusation, every lie whispered in your absence. Every manipulation disguised as concern, every scheme crafted in the dark, documented, marked, weighted. And now, the scales are rebalancing. They thought there would be no consequence. That because their actions went unseen by people. They were unseen by God. But what they didn't know is that God was never blind. He watched every tear you cried in silence. He saw every time you chose peace over retaliation. He witnessed you absorb the pain instead of spreading it. And he was taking notes, because when you're chosen, justice doesn't come on your timeline. It comes on heaven's. But when it does, it comes with precision. And now, you're witnessing it. Their carefully crafted image, disintegrating. Their influence, shrinking. Their confidence, cracked wide open. They're not just losing people. They're losing favor. And that's deeper, because once favor lifts, nothing flows. Doors stop opening, ideas dry up, support fades away. Suddenly, the same manipulator who once orchestrated everything can't control anything. They're fumbling, scrambling, trying to rebuild what can't be rebuilt. Because divine justice doesn't just dismantle lies, it dismantles systems. And this whole system, this illusion they created, was built around the idea that you'd stay small, that you'd stay unaware, stay broken, stay desperate for their validation. But that foundation, it's shattered, and there's no going back. You see, God didn't just protect you, He vindicated you. And this is the part they never saw coming. Because for a long time, it looked like they were winning, didn't it? They had the influence, they had the attention, they had the narrative. And you had nothing but silence. But that silence was your protection. Because if God had vindicated you too soon, your heart wouldn't have been ready. Your discernment wouldn't have been sharp enough. Your boundaries wouldn't have been firm enough. So instead, He allowed the false system to run its course. Not to punish you, but to reveal them to everyone. And now, the truth is being revealed, not through gossip, not through slander, but through exposure. Authentic divine exposure, the kind no one can deny. The kind that doesn't need a microphone, because the fruit speaks for itself. And the fruit of their spirit, it's spoiled. People are noticing. Eyes are opening. Those who were once against you are quietly beginning to question everything. And some of them are starting to repent. Not always out loud, not always directly, but inside. They know they were wrong. They feel the weight of siding with deception, of silencing their own intuition, of watching you suffer and saying nothing. But don't be surprised when some try to come back now. Now that the truth is out, now that you're glowing, now that the rise they denied has become undeniable, they'll want to reconnect, reconcile, return to your energy. But this is where your new boundaries come in, because forgiveness is holy. But access, that's sacred. You can love someone from a distance. You can release the bitterness without reopening the door. Because this new version of you, it's guarded by heaven. You're no longer available for manipulation, no longer accessible to confusion, no longer open to recycled lies dressed in apologies. You don't need closure, you don't need explanations. Why? Because you got revelation. And revelation is better than closure. It's clearer, cleaner, stronger. You see it all now. And the truth, it sets you free. But it also does something else. It silences the accusers. Because when heaven moves on your behalf, there's no argument strong enough to stand against it. Their words bounce off now. Their efforts return to sender. Their plots evaporate before they're even formed. You're not just protected, you're untouchable. Because you were never fighting alone. And they weren't just attacking you. They were attacking what you represent. Your lineage, your calling, your legacy. And heaven said that's enough. So now, every false altar built to mock your purpose is falling. Every alliance formed to sabotage your name is dissolving. Every whisper spoken in the dark is being dragged into the light. Because justice doesn't just restore what was taken, it reverses what was stolen. And now, the same mouths that cursed you will witness your blessing. Not because you need their approval, but because heaven needs a testimony. And your life is the testimony. Proof that light wins, that truth remains, that when you stay aligned, No weapon, no lie, no scheme can prosper. So walk boldly, speak gently, glow unapologetically. Because the gavel has dropped, the court is adjourned, and your sentence? Freedom. Now that the dust has settled, now that justice has moved, the courtroom of heaven closed its case, and the false systems have fallen. You stand in a place they never thought you'd reach, a place not built by manipulation but by obedience, a place not earned through compromise but through alignment. This is your rise, and not the flashy kind, not the kind that screams for validation or demands attention. No, this is the quiet, sacred rise, the one heaven orchestrates behind the scenes, then reveals in divine timing. You don't have to perform. You don't have to compete. You don't even have to explain yourself anymore. Because the life you're living now speaks louder than any defense you could ever give. See, they said you were done, that you were broken, that you'd never recover after what they did, that your reputation was ruined, your name was stained, your purpose derailed. But what they didn't know is that God was never finished. In fact, he was just getting started, because while they plotted your downfall, he was planting your next season. While they stripped you of what you built, he was laying foundation in a realm they couldn't touch. While they called it a loss, he called it a launch. And now, everything is different. You've grown, not just externally, but deep in your soul. You've become someone unshakable, rooted, wise, clear. And that's why everything is beginning to align. Resources, connections, favor, opportunities. Not forced, not begged for. Flowing, because you're no longer chasing. You're attracting. You're no longer surviving, you're building. You're no longer asking for a seat at the table. You are the table. This is what they feared. Not just that you'd heal, but that you'd come back stronger. That the one they underestimated, the one they mocked, the one they discarded, would rise with nothing but divine backing and quiet power. And the irony? You were never even trying to prove them wrong. You were just becoming who you were born to be. But your becoming is loud, it echoes. It reverberates through every lie they told, every rumor they spread, every limitation they tried to place on your name. Now let's be clear. This isn't about revenge. You've outgrown that. You don't need them to see you winning. You don't need them to admit they were wrong. You don't need closure from people who can't even face their own truth. Because your closure was in the becoming, in the nights you cried alone but kept praying, in the days you had nothing left but still kept showing up, in the moments your spirit screamed, "I'm done," but your soul whispered, "Not yet." That's where the transformation happened, and that's what they can't duplicate. Because your rise, it wasn't manufactured, it wasn't borrowed, it wasn't built on the backs of others. It was forged in the fire. And fire never lies. So now they can try to copy your language, try to mimic your light, try to walk like you, talk like you, preach like you. But they can't carry what you carry. Because what you carry isn't just knowledge. It's wisdom earned through warfare. It's grace built through grief. It's strength born from surrender. And there's no shortcut to that. Only those who've been through the valley, who've stared betrayal in the face and chose forgiveness instead of retaliation, qualify for this level of peace. And that peace, it's what silences the room when you walk in now. Not ego, not force, but presence. You carry presence because you walked through fire and came out carrying the flame. Now, you're leading without trying, influencing without pushing, healing others just by being. And the people who once misunderstood you, they don't even recognize you now because you don't operate on the same frequency anymore. You've evolved, you've ascended, you've mutated, and their old tricks don't work here. Their shade can't touch your glow. Their whispers can't reach your altitude. Their opinions can't interrupt your assignment because you're no longer moved by noise. You're moved by God. Every step now, ordered, every delay, divinely calculated. Every no you received back then was really a protection. Every door that slammed shut was God saying, "I have something better, just wait." And now, the better is here, not because you forced it, not because you faked it, but because you aligned. This is the rise they never saw coming. Because it's not loud, but it's undeniable. It doesn't seek revenge, but it rewrites every narrative. It doesn't need approval, but it demands respect. So keep walking, keep rising, keep expanding. The same eyes that watched you suffer will now witness your redemption, not for applause, not for validation, But because your rise is the evidence that God's hand was always on your life. So now, take a breath. Look at where you are. Look at how far you've come. Not just in the natural, but in the spirit. You were never meant to stay on your knees broken. You were being positioned for the rise. They thought they were burying you, but they didn't know you were seated. And now you've bloomed right in front of the very ones who declared your death. You survived betrayal. You outlived the lies. You walked through the fire and didn't come out smelling like smoke. You came out with glory. And that glow they now see on you, it's not pride, it's not ego. It's divine evidence that God's hand never left you. You don't owe anyone an explanation. You don't owe them your softness, your silence, or your return. You owe yourself the peace you fought for. So stay in your lane, stay aligned, stay covered. Because what's ahead for you, it's bigger than vindication. It's bigger than revenge. It's legacy. You're here to break patterns, to shift timelines, to walk with authority in places your ancestors only dreamed of. So don't shrink. Don't second-guess your intuition. Don't explain your glow to those who chose to live in darkness. This rise wasn't just about you. It was about the generations behind you and the ones coming after. You are the answer to their prayers. You are the prophecy in motion. You are the reason the attacks didn't work. And now, you walk forward not as the victim of what happened, but as the evidence that grace wins. Let them sit in the regret they created. Let them wrestle with the loss of what they tried to destroy. Let the weight of their own actions teach them what your words never could. Because you've got things to build, souls to reach, legacies to carry. And there's no room for looking back. You were chosen, you were tried, and now you are crowned. If this message spoke to your spirit, subscribe. Comment "I rise" below. Let this be your declaration. You've walked through the fire, and now it's time to walk in the fullness of who you truly are. Your time is now. Let the world watch. Let heaven lead, and let every knee that wished your fall now witness your rise.